Well, good morning, magandang umaga, and welcome to today's episode of My PI Dream. Today we are in episode number 8 of the Pavilion build in the backyard of Villa Feliz. And I thought it would be pretty interesting to see how we get from a really rough piece of wood into a finished piece of wood that we're going to use for the pavilion framing assembly. So if you are interested in taking a rough piece of lumber and turning it into a piece of beauty, today's episode might be for you. So without further delay, let's get today's video underway. Now here in the Philippines, you might have some challenges trying to find that finished piece of wood that you want to do for a wood project. And if you have to do like this, if you have to be able to take a piece of rough lumber like we have right here and convert it into something like what you see of it here, then today's the episode for you, because we're going to be talking about taking some rough lumber, milling it down a little bit, and doing whatever is necessary to finish it off so you get a nice finish like this over here. Let's get a closer look of this wood. Okay, hop on, you got to get it out of the way. Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to show the process of taking a rough piece of lumber like you see right here, taking a rough piece of lumber and converting this or doing all the finishing necessary to make it look like this piece of lumber right here, which is our 6x6 post for the pavilion. This is what's going to hold up the roof. So I will go through each step, the milling, the finishing, the treating, and the final finish, which is going to be the stain. We're going to go through all of that today so that you can see how you get from this to this. Now, I believe you've already seen some of the videos of the work that went on using the joiner over here and the planer. But today what we're going to do, we're going to be a little bit more detailed so you can see exactly each step of the way, going from cleaning up of the wood to the final finish. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I'm going to do today is I'm going to run the 6x6 post through this jointer right here, and the joiner is going to do, like I said in an earlier video, we're going to make sure that we have two good sides and that have a 90-degree angle to each other. We're not worried about the outside or the top right now, because that's going to be taken care of inside the planer. So we're going to run the piece of wood through here, and this will hopefully make sure that we have levelness in case you have any type of a bow inside your piece of wood, and also that the bottom and the side are exactly 90 degrees to each other, and that will set us up for the planer over here. Alright, now that we have one side of our 6x6 jointed and smooth, based on the opposite side that's approximately a 90-degree angle, we're going to take the other unfinished 90-degree angle that we have here, and we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to use the side that we already did the joining on the bottom to make it flat. We're going to use that up against the fence this time. So we're basically swapping this side for this side. What we'll do is, once we do that, we should have two nice and flat pieces of wood that are at a 90-degree angle. And in a simple world, in a perfect world, we should just be able to take this over to the planer and run it through the planer after that, and it will give us all four sides will be the exact same depth. Unfortunately, we don't live in a very perfect world, and my planer, as I said earlier, will only do 6 inches and 3/16. That's the maximum. And most of this wood is 6.5 by 6.5 or 6 1/4 by 6 1/4. So we'll continue to have to do some joining to shave off enough of the wood so that we can get over in the planer. Let me go ahead and flip this over, and let's put this side on the bottom. So as you can see, this was the bottom, and we flipped it to the side to go along the fence so that we can keep it 90 degrees to the bottom side that we used against the fence just a minute ago. So what we'll end up with is this piece of wood. The way it looks here, the underside will be identical to that at a 90-degree angle going through the joiner. So that's our next step, and then we'll continue doing joining after that, and we'll clean up the top and the bottom enough to get it down to approximately 6 inches so that we can put it inside the planer. Now that we have two sides at a perfect 90-degree angle going through the joiner over here, the next step we're going to do is we're going to make all four sides equal. And the way we do that is we put it through the planer. So we're going to run it through the planer over here until we get the achieved depth and width that we want of this 6x6. Now, since I don't have 100% good clean wood that's 6 inches by 6 inches, we'll go ahead and cut off a little bit more. Somewhere in between 5.5 and 5 3/4 will be our final 6x6 size on this post that we're doing right now. Now that we have our wood cleaned up using the joiner and also using the planer, we got it to about the specs that we want. We have to clean it up, and we're going to clean it up. When I say clean up, meaning we're going to do a bunch of sanding, and we're going to use several sanding tools here. The first sanding tool that we're going to use is a belt sander. Now here's our belt sander, and our belt sander with something like an 80 grit belt on here, what it's going to do, it's going to take off the roughest portions of any mistakes that were done with the joiner or the planer, and actually anything like pieces of wood like this right here that are still rough from maybe some bark. And our last sanding stage is going to be using a orbital sander. Our orbital sander is going to bring it down to that final finish where we can apply that stain. Now, the orbital sander is not just one pass through and you're done. We're going to actually use many different courses of grit through here, starting with a 60 grit, which is going to be the roughest after we do the belt sander. And then we're going to go from a 60 grit to an 80 grit, to a 120 grit, a 150, I think a 180, and a 220. 220 is the one that's going to have the finest sanding coat that we have just before our final finish. It's kind of funny how it goes opposite. The smaller the number, the bigger the sand that they have on here, and the higher the number, the smaller the sand. Now this is what the wood looks like after the belt sander, and the belt sander does a pretty good job, but it's mainly for imperfections. Sometimes when you run the wood through the planer, you'll get some little gouges inside there, and it'll take out those really obvious imperfections. Well, you can kind of see a little bit of one right there, and that is from the planer, and that does a great job. That will be caught using the orbital sander. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, James, it looks really good. Why would you want to go with the orbital sander? Well, you don't realize what happens when you put stain on wood. Stain will reveal everything. When you put a finish like stain on wood, if you have a belt sander like that and the belt only goes in this direction, if you look real closely right here, you'll see a lot of the sanding goes in this direction too, and it will reveal all the sanding from the belt sander in the final stage. Because of the stain, it reveals imperfections. It also makes things look beautiful. So we'll use the orbital sander, which instead of going only in one direction, like this right here, it will go in many different directions, and it will be perfectly flat. You won't see that any sanding was done on this wood. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to use the orbital sander. Alright, so you can see now after doing all of the different grit of the sandpaper, starting with the 60 grit working all the way to the 220, we have a very, very nice finish here. And it is ready for the termite treatment. And we're going to do that next. Then we'll do the termite treatment. Next thing we'll do after that, we'll do the stain. But I warn you that the termite treatment using the Silignum takes 24 to 48 hours. So it's going to delay me being able to push this video, but we want to do it right so you see every single step to get to the final finish. What I'm going to be using today is the Selignum All Around Clear with micro emulsion technology, and what this is, it's just the way it penetrates inside the wood. And this is what we're going to use to stop the termites. We don't want the termites getting in our really nice wood. We also don't want any mold or fungi on our wood. And as with any type of a treatment, when you are treating something with chemicals, make sure that you wear the appropriate safety gear. So basically gloves so that you don't get anything inside here on your skin, as well as you should have a mask on, and maybe some goggles, something to protect your eyes. Now the Selignum is going to take 3 coats. We're going to do 3 coats of this. We're going to let it dry for 24 to 48 hours like I said earlier, and it's just a matter of taking some out of the container, putting it in some kind of a bucket, and then brushing it on. Just brush it on and allow it to penetrate inside the wood. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I will tell you, a little bit of this Selignum goes a long way. And you can see that the Selignum treatment doesn't change the characteristic of the wood. Also, when you're putting it on, if you have a place that you have that's a little bit rougher that you might have routed out, and specifically on the end cuts, make sure you apply extra treatment on those areas, because they are like a wick and they'll absorb, and that's the places that the termites would really like to get into first. It's their easy target, and especially the part that's closest to the ground. All right, well there you have it. We have 3 coats of the Selignum on here. We'll let it set up for 24 to 48 hours. And the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and put the stain on. See you in 24 to 48 hours. Well, we're down to our very last step, and our very last step is doing the finishing using the stain. The deck stain that we have that will actually preserve some of the wood, give it some color, and also what it will do a little bit of repelling against some of the rain around here. And here's our Selignum. It comes in a variety of different colors. The color that I chose here is something called Cape Sable, and it gives some of the red richness tone that complements the mahogany so much. So let's go ahead and put on a couple of coats of this stain so that we can go ahead and start working with some more wood to get it back into this condition. Well, there you have it. About 3 days worth of work to go from this to what you see here and on the post inside the back. Let's look a little closer at the wood post so we can make some comparisons and some tips. Now, before I get a bunch of comments from a bunch of viewers saying, well, this is darker than this post, and this post is darker than these 2 posts in the back. Well, it has to do with how long that the stain sits on the wood and it saturates the wood. This is what I'm trying to achieve, is this really dark color wood right here. And this is pretty stable. It's not going to get much darker than this. But as this dries, which I did like 2 days ago, and these 2 I only did today. These are the ones that I just finished up. These will each get darker, and they will eventually be the same color as this wood right here, the darkness that we see here. Now the amount and the time that you allow your stain to sit on your wood will determine the darkness of your wood. So if you want something that's really light and you put it on, you put the stain on, and you're about to achieve the darkness that you want, you can use a rag and you can wipe off the excess, and it won't get much darker than that. But if you're trying to get darker, let the stain stay on a little bit longer before you wipe it off, or just don't wipe it off if you want to get a very dark color inside your stain. And that's kind of what we want to do for this. We want it to be like rustic. That's the pavilion that we're looking for. Okay, that's about it for today's episode. It took 3 days to do this episode, but I hope it was worth it to you. And if it was worth it to you, please give us a thumbs up. Please share, and if you have not subscribed, just click on that little My PI Dream heart in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And if you ring that bell, you'll be notified the next time we upload a new video. So until such time from right here in the beautiful Philippines, you have a wonderful and blessed day. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to see more just like these, just click on one of the helpful links over to your right and you might be able to pick up on some good information on DIY projects, how to, or if you are interested in moving to the Philippines and building, you'll find answers there as well.